You're watching WXYZ 7. Now, Action News.
Good afternoon. I'm John Kleekamp. We begin this noon with disturbing news concerning our troops in the Persian Gulf. The CIA has put out a new warning that al-Qaeda terrorists may be targeting American forces if a ground war is launched on Iraq. Reporter David Ensor has the story.
U.S. officials say the new two-page report by the CIA warns that terrorists based in Iraq are planning attacks against American and allied troops if they should invade. The CIA report says one group of 4 to 8 or more al-Qaeda operatives have been spotted in Baghdad, a cell set up by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Secretary Powell spoke about that group before the UN last month.
And they've now been operating freely in the capital for more than 8 months.
The other group are al-Qaeda fighters who fled Afghanistan for the small enclave controlled by a sympathetic group in northern Iraq, Ansar al-Islam. U.S. officials say there may be 200 or more of them. The CIA report says, according to officials, that after U.S. forces move into Iraq, terrorist fighters may blend in with the Iraqi population and then try to get close enough to troops to conduct terrorism, possibly using conventional explosives or, quote, toxins. The report said such attacks are being planned as independent terror operations. The groups are tolerated by the government of Saddam Hussein, it says, but not controlled by it.
That was David Ensor reporting. President Bush's national security advisor did not mince words this morning on the possibility of war in Iraq. On ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Condoleezza Rice criticized countries that insist that Saddam Hussein is now contained in a box and no longer poses a threat. Ms. Rice said the opposite is true.
And he's still making demands on the United Nations with more than 200,000 troops in his neighborhood, and he's not contained. Over the last 12 years, he has gone from $500 million in illegal funding to $3 billion in illegal funding, which he is using to rebuild his weapons of mass destruction network and to fund terrorism around the world. He is not contained.
Ms. Rice also said that while a deadline has been set, Saddam Hussein still has time to meet all disarmament demands before a possible strike by Allied forces. And there are reports out of Kuwait that terrified Iraqi soldiers have already tried to surrender to British forces. About a dozen troops crossed the border to Kuwait waving a white flag, thinking the war had already started because the paratroopers from Great Britain were test-firing weapons when the Iraqis tried to surrender. But Saddam's soldiers were ordered back into Iraq after the paratroopers told them it was too early to surrender. There is also a new threat today from North Korea. An Australian newspaper claims leader Kim Jong-il is fully prepared to launch a ballistic missile attack on the United States if Washington attacks his country's nuclear facility. It even said the attacks would strike Washington, New York, and Chicago. The North Korean statements are in reaction to the U.S. sending 24 long-range bombers to Guam that would be capable of such a strike. Publicly, the Bush administration is still hoping for a diplomatic resolution. Now, here are some new developments in the war on terror. Information has surfaced that Iraq's neighbor Iran is further along with its nuclear program than many experts had previously thought. The report in this week's Time magazine says Iran has an extremely advanced facility to make enriched uranium that it soon hopes to open under guidance by the International Atomic Energy Agency. And in Pakistan, military sources say the search for Osama bin Laden has narrowed. They are concentrating on a remote corridor that stretches 350 miles from southwest Pakistan to the Afghan-Iranian border. Palestinian militants are vowing to take revenge for an Israeli missile attack. One of the founding members of the Islamic group Hamas was killed along with 3 bodyguards. Israeli helicopters zeroed in on his car and fired missiles. This latest killing came after Hamas claimed responsibility for last week's attack on a Jewish settlement and for the suicide bus bombing that killed 16 people, including an American teen. And this morning, Israeli forces demolished the homes of Palestinians linked to those attacks. Troops planted explosives around the homes, then blew them up. The Army often demolishes the homes of militants and suicide bombers in an attempt to deter attacks on Israelis. Palestinians condemned the act, calling it a violation of international law. And in the wake of the world situation, Pope John Paul II appealed for peace today in Vatican City. The Pope said he was afraid that evil would be colliding with good during the coming week. He recommended that all clergy and the faithful dedicate prayers to preserving peace. The Pope added that with the threat of war, the need to purify the conscience and have a peaceful heart was stronger than ever. And back home, dozens of people took part in a special rally this morning to save St. Alphonsus High School in Dearborn. The pastor has recommended it close at the end of this school year, but a special task force is taking action in hopes of keeping the doors open. Action News reporter Bill Proctor joins us live from Dearborn with the story. Good afternoon, Bill.
Good afternoon. They did, in fact, send out a reality letter just a few days ago from the parish priest indicating that 4 school years ago, the high school had 295 students. This year, that number's down to 75. It's a situation that the pastor insists they just can't afford, but those on the task force and the supporters insist, yes, they can.
Save our school! Save our school!
Among the students, parents, and supporters walking the informational picket demonstration this morning was an 11th grader who, after 3 years at St. Al's, enjoys the smallest of class sizes. She studies and competes with just 25 other students.
Well, I think our teachers give us more attention. We have a very nice family community for being such a small school.
My brother went here in the 70s. My husband's whole family went here.
Kathy's daughter is now a senior here, and she, too, attended St. Al's back in the 70s when the tuition, now $4,700, was a lot less. But she's not concerned with the low attendance these days.
There have been reasons for it. You know, every time there's been a change in leadership, we've lost students. There have been a lot of rumors over the years that the school was going to close, and an uncertain future has really cost us our student population.
Save our school! Save our school!
I think with the right marketing and good word out on the street, our school can grow. We have a big interest in it right now.
There is an interest, and the old school you see there is in pretty good shape, and yes, pushing the parish priest and some others to get out and do some recruiting. Next year, they increase the potential population about 25%, and so they're talking about leadership maybe being the problem here. But in the meantime, the school is scheduled to close, at least the high school portion, at the end of this school year. Reporting live from Dearborn, Bill Proctor, Channel 7 Action News.
Thank you very much, Bill. Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick says that the city is in big trouble financially. He says residents